ladies and gents in the room and online audience. Good afternoon to all of you. My name is Johan Hutton. I'm Professor and Deputy Dean here in the Law Faculty. I'll do the introductions this afternoon, but really I'm going to ask my two colleagues with me, Professor Afton Titus and Ben Cronin, to do most of the talking. So welcome to all of you, and welcome to the online audience to this information session. Good afternoon. So what we are going to talk about this afternoon is the postgraduate tax offerings that we have here in the Faculty of Law next year in 2024. There's been some changes to the structure of the programs. We'll explain that. And then if we can go to the first slide. I think you have to move it there. What we're going to deal with is on the slide here. So some introductions about what these programs are about. And then these slides will be available afterwards, and it will be on YouTube, I think, so you can always come back to this. So what the programs are about. These are, of course, postgraduate degrees, so there's always a research component. So we'll talk about what research will be required if you enter these programs. What is the value of these programs? Why particularly come to UCT for a tax program? What is the benefit of this to you and your career? We will speak a bit about who teaches on these programs so that you understand who you will encounter here. Who is the type of person who comes and enroll in a postgraduate tax program? We'll talk about that, what you can expect in the classroom as far as colleagues are concerned and who we are aiming this program at. And then, of course, we'll talk a bit if there's questions about applications, fundings, and deadlines, and all that sort of thing. And then lastly, you can also ask us questions, of course. Okay, so if we can go on. Thanks, Ben. So firstly, a bit of background about teaching of tax at UCT. The teaching of tax as a postgraduate subject in South Africa started here at UCT in 1968. So for a very long time, we've got a tradition of teaching tax as a specific subject. In the law faculty, it started in the early 1990s with the first master's degree in tax law in the country. And Judge Dennis Davis, who many of you might know if you work in the tax field, started that program. So there's a long tradition of teaching tax specifically as a postgraduate offering in this faculty and at the university. And so we who are doing it today have got big shoes to fill, and we are passing on this tradition. And we are very fortunate that we are supported by, as you will hear later on, lots of outside parties and international organizations. So, you will be joining a prestigious program if you get into one of these UCT tax degrees. There's two focus areas in the Faculty of Law. The one is, of course, tax law as such as the subject field, and the other one, which is more recent, is international taxation. After South Africa opened to the world in the 1990s, and we have moved towards globalization, that, of course, affects the whole field of taxes as well. And so we have a second master's program that focuses specifically on international taxation. And we'll speak about each of these programs in more detail so that you understand what it is that you will face in them. I should say up front that the teaching model at UCT is residential. That means we do not have online degrees. We have small, intensive classes. They are very interactive, and that makes, in our experience, for the best quality of teaching. So we have found through the COVID years that it was very difficult to replicate that very highest standard of teaching in an online platform. So if you enroll in these degrees, it will mean that you have to come to UCT on a weekly basis during the teaching semester to attend lectures. It doesn't mean we don't use technology. We make quite a a lot of use of technology and online platforms to push content to you. There are very many types of platforms. So you might get recorded videos, some reading, some discussion tasks, lesson plans, lots of different ways in which we use technology to aid our teaching. But by far the most important part still remains our weekly meetings in a lecture room. So that's important to understand. As I've mentioned, we've got excellent resources. Our library databases are unsurpassed in this country. You get access to very expensive tax databases that many of the largest law firms don't even have. So that's something we're incredibly proud of, is the library collection in tax and international tax is extremely comprehensive, extensive, and you will get a lot of value out of that on its own. We are also lucky that we are supported by very prestigious international organizations, the International Bureau of Fiscal Documentation, IBFD, in Amsterdam. It's got an academic cooperation agreement with us. That means we've got full access to their databases. They teach their senior staff and they come over and teach on our courses. We have a tax thesis competition in the International Tax Masters, many other things that the IBFD collaboration enables. And we have others as well, most recently with the University of Amsterdam. Professor Titus is an alumni of that university. They collaborate with us. We had a conference on technology and taxes in April. So exposure to the international world will be very much part of your journey at UCT in one of these degrees. There's also AIDIT in the United Kingdom, the Advanced Diploma of International Tax, which our international tax program. You can do that concurrently with the AIDIT qualification. So we're very aware of the global world, and our students, of course, benefit from all these collaborations as well. With that, I'm going to stop at this point and hand over to my colleagues who will talk to you more about the content of the courses and the other points we have on the agenda.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Titus. I'm an associate professor here in the Commercial Law Department. So I would like to take you through our very exciting courses that we offer here with our programs. So first, I'll take you through the LLM in Tax Law, which will then, like the enterprise, will be a one-year program as from next year. So what that means is, in terms of what you would register for, is you would register for fundamental principles of tax law and tax treaty law in the first semester. In the second semester, you will do statutory tax law of entities and transactions, and you will also do tax policy in a developmental context. So what this offers you is a very nice mix of both a focus on domestic tax law in South Africa and also on international tax law, as we described to you how domestic tax systems interact with each other, which is basically international tax law. So when we talk about fundamental principles of tax law as a course, what that is, it's fundamentally South African domestic law focused. So that means that we will take you through the principles of South African domestic law that basically don't change year on year. If you want to be a tax practitioner, you must understand these principles extremely well, and that's what we do with that particular course. Then we interface that very nicely with tax treaty law, which allows you then to take this knowledge about domestic law and understand how it operates on an international level. So tax treaty law will then fundamentally focus on international tax, and we would identify certain specific areas that are topical year on year. So it's also a very dynamic area. I'm sure you can appreciate being interactions with other domestic systems. So every year it will change. And then in the second semester, we have statutory tax law, which will then be a domestic-focused course. And in this course, you will really drill down into some of the more fundamental principles about tax law So we'll take you deep into the statutory interpretations of certain select provisions from the Income Tax Act. You'll be able then to understand why they are so important. And then we'll have a look at tax policy in the developmental context, which is a very exciting course. Here we will again interface these domestic discussions on an international level, where we discuss some of the more topical areas in international tax, but also on a focus on why they look the way that they do. So we ask questions like, what are the factors that would bring about a law to look the way that it does? And then we compare it to other provisions to see what are the factors that would be common. So altogether, those four courses would then make up the LLM in tax law in the law faculty.
Good afternoon, my name is Ben Cronin. I'm a recent acquisition of UCT. I'm a lecturer that's joined the team. I was previously in practice for just over a decade. So just on this particular slide, I'm going to address the other degree, which is the LLM or MCOM in international tax. So unlike what Professor Titus had described as 4 modules, there will be 2, one in the first semester and one in the second semester. And as the name suggests, it's entirely focused on international tax. So I just want to explain the link between an LLM and an MCOM. You'd be sitting alongside some students that would be registered under Commerce faculty. You'd essentially be doing the same degree. What you exit with would depend a little bit on your choice within the program, but also the final choice of what you write on. But there is another dimension of overlap in that there is some international law, as Professor Titus suggested, in the general tax masters, and there would be again a little bit of overlap between those students. But the international tax masters is intensive and very focused. I'm just going to move to the next slide.
So to take you through then, what we do in the law faculty is we offer 2 streams. So you could either do the LLM by coursework and minor dissertation, or you could do it by professional masters. So the coursework and minor dissertation is where you have a coursework component, so that would be the courses that we've presented to you, and you would write an assessment with respect to that. And there might be smaller assessments within that particular course. That is quite separate from having to do a minor dissertation, which is something additional to that. So with a minor dissertation, what that is you will have a research project for about 25,000 words. Now, it may sound like a lot, having not written a single one, but I can tell you that 25,000 words is not a lot. So what that means is you have to have a topic that you're very passionate about, and again, this is something we really need to emphasize, because it's going to be a lot of time that you spend on this topic. You need to love it, because it will hate you if you don't. So then, we spend as supervisors, you will then ask one of us to assist you with this, and we will help you to make sure that the topic that you have selected is appropriate for the 25,000 words, that it is well fleshed out, but also it can't be too broad. It has to actually be very narrow to cover it in some depth. And we want to make sure that you understand what we require of you to complete this process altogether. So the idea then is that you come to us with some sort of topic. We tell you that we can probably narrow it in this way. You think about it and you come back to us and tell us, okay, I like this, I don't like that. Can we do this? Can we do that? And you work with your supervisor then, and we work out timelines. Okay? You have basically a year to finish these 4 courses plus the dissertation. It's not a lot of time. It really isn't. So then at the very beginning, we have to sort out when you are going to submit the chunks of your dissertation, because it's not advisable to do everything at once. Right? This is a growing process as well, so that we can help you to become a better researcher, a better writer. So then, fundamentally, you will be working on your own in terms of setting your own deadlines, keeping to them, and then submitting them. Right? So it requires a lot of self-discipline. And if you, I hope that at this stage you know yourself well enough So if you have doubts about whether or not you have the required self-discipline, then don't do a dissertation. At the same time, if you have the discipline, please do it, but don't expect your supervisors to constantly check whether you are meeting your own deadlines. Okay. So the minor dissertation and the coursework, very exciting option. It gives you a lot of freedom about what you would like to research, but it requires a lot from you, and it's a growing process. All growing processes, some good things are good and some good things are not so good.
The obvious alternative is the professional masters, right, which is 4 set topics that you would then much smaller in size, and you would have group environments to discuss, thrash out, but also group supervision, right? And so concurrent with each course of writing an exam, you would also essentially midway through each course you'd be given a set topic, and this would be the alternative to one large written project. And I think this is leading neatly into a discussion we'll have in a few minutes, which is it lends itself quite well to different students' needs. Some are in practice, some are aspirant academics, and some are either to write a big particular topic that's been burning on their mind for some time, or want the exposure of the 4 different topics. So we, I think, have a neat blend of opportunities.
Okay, so let's talk to you then about why you should focus on us. Why would you decide to choose UCT to do your tax program? Well, I think that's a very excellent question. So to start off with, I want to impress upon you that we have quite a wide and deep level of expertise. So as you will see from the slide, we have a mix of UCT experts, in-house professors, and we also have a number of tax practitioners who mainly operate as our adjunct staff. And over and above that, we also have tax policy professionals, which come to us through the international organizations with whom we are affiliated. So as you can see from the slide, we have quite a breadth of staff who can take you through their areas of expertise. And this is really quite fundamental, because what you have here is you have a lovely mix of both experts in international tax and domestic tax, also international law and domestic law and international tax, and also academia and professional practice.
So, who would be interested in doing an LLM in tax at UCT? Well, I think quite a range of people. In my own experience, I've been in practice as an attorney, as an advocate. I worked for a brief period as a state law advisor in the government. So I've had quite a breadth of exposure to people who, in quite a wide array of job descriptions, have sought out the specific masters. And another interesting facet for me of this degree is when I started as an attorney right at the beginning, in fact, as a candidate attorney in the law firm I began to do my articles, I was one of the very first candidate attorneys to be recruited specifically for tax. And when I look back now, it grew from a team of just a handful of people. It's now almost 50 people specializing in this area. And so I can't express how significant the growth has been. Whether it's in an attorney space, there's a growing pool. There used to be a very small pool of advocates who specialized in tax. There's a much wider array of professionals. And it is, I think, slowly growing in other spaces as well. In government, there's a growing need for this specialization. And more court cases, better or worse, right, have SARS on the other side as the relevant party. So I can only imagine that there are quite a wide spectrum of students that would look to this specialist program. And I think taxation is not going anywhere. It's, in my experience, only growing and growing. But I I think you will have to anticipate that you'll be a student alongside some people who've just recently graduated from their LLB or some other related degree, as well as experienced practitioners who are looking to brush off, some of the rust and get back to the most recent case law. And in our postgraduate program, our anticipation is that there'll be quite serious engagement. And I think you will also learn quite a bit from the pool of students that you sit alongside.
So in the slides that follow, we've just provided a few links for some of the most important information that you need. Things like when exactly you should apply, where you should apply, and the links will tell you that. I think it was, and we also speak about opportunities for postgrad funding, so we provide a link for that. And these slides will be maintained. And then if you need any further information, we've provided some direct links that you can find for our postgraduate offerings. And now we would like to hear from you. Any specific questions?
I asked that you explain again the coursework part of the LLM.
Okay.
In tax. I didn't quite get that.
Okay, so for the LLM in tax, with the 4 courses, yeah, so that means you're going to do 2 courses per semester.
Okay.
Right? So you're going to be on campus at least twice a week for the lectures.
Okay.
Right? And then each of those courses will have an assessment. Right? So you have to write an exam or submit an assignment, and they may also during semester have smaller assessments like a test or something, or some other activity like a MOOC. Okay. So as a dissertation student, you have to do that, but you also have to be working on your dissertation over and above that time. So for example, you would have classes like on a Tuesday and a Wednesday, and then for the other 3 days of the week, not counting the weekend, assuming that you could work your time well enough to have some sort of social life, then you also have to give some time to your dissertation. So that means you have to be in contact with your supervisor quite regularly for this year to finish it within that year. Yeah.
So can I just check, so there is no option for a 2-year master's in tax at all?
That is an excellent question. Yes, there is such an option. It's called a part-time option.
Okay.
So you will register as a part-time student, and what that means is it lengthens the degree to 2 years. Okay? So we halve everything. So if you, of course, work as a dissertation student, that means you're going to do 1 course per semester for 4 semesters, and you have effectively 2 years for which to complete your dissertation. If you are professional master students, that means that you're going to do 1 course per semester, 4 semesters, and you have to complete each research task with that corresponding course.
Just another question, sorry, I got to that. So in terms of the 2, I mean, they're both our views, prestige-wise, they hold the same kind of value. That's a question that I ask.
No, it's a good question, because people often ask what is the professional master's versus the one with the minor dissertation for. So firstly, on your degree certificate, it is the same. The minor dissertation option is really for someone who wants to pursue an academic career, because it's the type of apprenticeship skill that you would need to one day write a PhD. By far, the biggest portion of students who do the tax program don't go into academics. And the professional master's speaks to the type of research skills that you need in practice. So it's not a lesser degree. It's not a lesser or easier type of research that you do in a research task. It's equally demanding. It's just the output is different. So whereas a minor dissertation is one long document, if you do a research task, for example, like write a tax opinion, then you have to craft your research in the form of a tax opinion, which is something you would typically do in practice. as an advocate or an attorney or a tax practitioner. Another task is, for example, we have a tax moot. So you use your research to craft heads of argument and to prepare oral argument in our moot court. So it's just the way you apply the research is focused on what you would need to do in practice with those types of skills. And we found that that speaks to what people actually want out of the degree, who will want to pursue a career in practice as opposed to a career in academia.
Is there the possibility of switching? So let's say you do the LM as the professional masters. Going from there into academia, is that a possibility? I mean, not switching through the course, but once it's completed,
Yes, so
in wanting to do a PhD.
it is rare, I must admit, but actually we have students in this faculty. At the most recent graduation, one of our PhD students graduated with a professional master's. So it's not impossible, but I think it helps you if you write a minor dissertation with 25,000 words. This is a PhD is 80,000 words. It gets you into, you start to understand what it takes to write such a longer piece.
Are there any requirements to enter into the master's program?
Yes. So the admission requirements is in the handbook. Basically, you need to have an LLB degree or its equivalent. So NQF level 8. And if you're from another country, I think there might be people online, then the university has got a whole protocol whereby they assess foreign degrees, whether they are the same as LLB. Yes, well, I mean, but there's lots of other things. If you're not a native English speaker, there's language requirements and so on. But that's the essence, that's the most important. The law faculty, generally, when you apply here, they will look at your academic performance up to the point of application. And generally, you have to have a GPA of 65% to be ensured to get in. But if you don't, we will also look at your experience. So if you have been in practice, then of course that will also be taken into consideration.
With regards to the Rights to Deploy International Tax and Logistic in the UK,
Yes.
how would that go about whilst what kind of do with let's say LLM in tax or?
So of course that is not offered by UCT, it's separately offered by what is called the Chartered Institute of Taxation in the UK. So you have to register with them, it's a separate application process and so on. What we have done is the content of our International Tax Masters reflects the content of the exams and papers you have to do there. That's a distance-based qualification. So it's like a UNISA type degree. So some of our students have concurrently done it in the past. So as they study for the UCT courses and exams, they also prepare themselves to undertake the aided exams. But we are separate institutions, it's just the content is aligned. So if you're a very studious student, you can in 1 year obtain a South African qualification and an international qualification.
And you're not going on your life. So that's his whole focus. Coming back to that, I just wanted to check with, so time-wise, I know you said there were lectures within and stuff, right? So if it was a full-time course, like how many hours are we looking at? Shooting a week, like nothing.
So maybe something to just clarify in the structure of the year is in the very beginning of the year, both if you're doing the international tax or the LLM, the general LLM, is you have an intensive week at the beginning, which is co-run with IBFD. And that would be block teaching, basically.
So it's not throughout this.
So it's not throughout the year, right? That would be an intensive period. In the first semester, then you would have essentially one course would be weekly, and the other course would have a sparse few additional lectures. And then in the second semester, you anticipate 2 courses. If you do this over a year, every week you would essentially have 2 3-hour.
Yeah, 3-hour sessions normally, somewhere in the afternoon. So we try to take account of people who also work. So late afternoon. The International Tax Masters is taught differently. That's 1 session a week for a whole of a Monday afternoon. But you have to prepare yourself at least once or twice a week. You know, for a 3-hour session is you have to get yourself into the mental space, prepare, and so on. So it's very important if you work to arrange sufficient study leave.
Yeah.
And the international masters, so that, I mean, that doesn't fit South African law as such, it's just how the 2 interact with each other.
So the International Tax Masters is designed for students from any country in the world.
Mhm.
You don't have to be a South African tax specialist or whatever. It's of course helpful if you have some grounding in a tax system. But we teach it on the basis that it's not South African tax law that we are teaching. We are teaching really at the international level.
And there's some unparalleled exposure you get through our specific program, given our connection to that UCT. And to clarify, if people are ignorant, the IFD is the apex body of the kind of repository of international tax knowledge.
It's the UN of international
Okay.
tax. Yeah. So I would say you must also be clear what your ambitions would be post this degree in choosing which one you want to go through. And that helps to position yourself. You'll see, as you would have seen, there's lots of optionality, lots of choices you can make. And it's easiest to think where you want to go afterwards.
Yes. Are there any questions from participants online? Don't see any. Can I share just a little bit more info about funding?
Please do.
Okay.
But please come and stand here so that I can see you.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Then I will share my screen. Okay.
Maybe while you're doing that, there's maybe just one additional point to make on the 2 questions that you asked, is that I think historically there had been quite a popular trend of practitioners wanting to part specialize in tax, having a diploma of some kind. But I think in practice, there is a growing focus on having a master's, particularly if you are in practice. And so I think whether it's attorneys or advocates who mid-career suddenly become, they realize that actually taxation is a primary focus for them, often find they wanted to get an absolute grounding in tax and will seek out a master's. But that is why I think the professional master's is so popular, is that it's a certification to the rest of the world that this is something that you are not even competent on, but specialized in.
So a lot of very clueless people in practice about it. So it just seems to be one of those areas where people are really scared to go for some reason, and it's, so then.
That's why, I mean, the point about the masters is it gives you, I think, for life, a framework to deal with this very complex area. So of course we don't cover all the nitty-gritty of tax. It's far too vast. But when you walk away here, you have the skills to deal with it in the future. Particularly what is good and bad information and how to deal with this information. So we want to give you a fundamental framework and a set of skills.
Touches on all areas of law, so.
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to introduce Gaby Ritchie, which is our faculty marketing manager, and she will talk to you a bit about postgraduate funding options.
Thanks, Prof. I know that's really hard to see if you're sitting in the venue because it's being shared on the screen, but it will be on the recording. There are a few things about funding opportunities. The first is that UCT has quite an active and comprehensive what's called the postgraduate hub. And one of the things that they're focused on is funding. And they have access to just a whole list of local and international funding opportunities for postgrad students at UCT, but also for postgrad students involved in kind of various specific areas. And I don't know specifically about the extent to which tax is one of those funding focus areas, but there is enough sort of more broadly defined categories of funding for students to have a good opportunity of being able to attract some kind of scholarship support. The other thing is that the faculty has its own postgraduate funding program, which is, I think, as any scholarship funding process, is fairly competitive. There are always more students needing funding than there's funding available. But we do end up granting a couple of million a year in postgrad funding across all the different categories of postgrad scholarships, most of which I think are donor funded. So this is all sort of money that the faculty, one way or another, has pulled together, either in a sort of special name scholarship or through a general scholarship fund that we run. But it's absolutely worth applying. Don't be put off by the competition. You don't ask, you don't get. I think that's one of the first rules of looking for funding. But just to go back to the UCT Postgraduate Hub, they have an email address which is on the screen. And again, this will be available through the recording. If any of you are on Twitter or what's now called X, I would strongly recommend following them. They are at UCT Postgrads and they are constantly posting scholarship opportunities. So they are very important to keep an eye on. They take consultation appointments where they will engage with you kind of on a one-to-one around specifics and what you may or may not be eligible for. And the other couple of things to remember is about timing. I think we're getting a little bit more synchronized, but we've been through a patch, I think, where applying for the postgrad programs and applying for the postgraduate scholarships was a little bit out of sync. So some of the postgrad scholarship deadlines would be for the application deadlines. So you would sort of be having to apply for scholarship funding without knowing if you were being offered a place. But don't let that put you off either. Just apply for whatever you think you might be eligible for. Yeah, I think the caution was that once you've actually registered and you're starting to study, it's almost impossible to find funding while you're already registered, and close to absolutely impossible to find funding for fee debt. So if you're trying to look for funding to cover last year's fees so you can register, that doesn't work either. As far as the faculty goes, yeah, it's very competitive, but also merit-based. So it is all about grades. I would imagine the postgraduate funding hubs criteria also very much about kind of grades. It's a competitive area. As far as I know, but this isn't applicable for the tax postgrads, there isn't any scholarship funding available for postgrad diplomas. There may be, certainly not in the faculty, but there is no longer a postgrad diploma in tax, is that right? Yeah. So don't worry about that, not applicable for this session. At the moment, our call for applications in the faculty for postgrad scholarships goes out around sort of October, November, with usually a mid-November closing date. So keep an eye on that. You would see, hopefully applicants are sent information about that, but I'm not certain how our faculty academic admin operates with respect to scholarships. But the page you need to look at is on our main faculty site, and it's just scholarship funding. So even if you have to Google scholarship funding UCT Law, the page, you would find the page. Otherwise, if you get completely stuck and you can't find anything, email Law Cares, because we do. It's just lawcares@uct.ac.za, and if we don't have the info to answer your question, we will at least try to find out who does have the info. So that's also quite important. The National Research Foundation is a sort of national South African research postgrad funding body, apart from doing a whole lot of other things. They did not used to fund coursework, as far as I know, but I think they are now increasingly making some funding available for coursework postgrad. So they're also worth checking out.
And then apply to them not through UCT.
You do. So again, I'm not 100% sure. You'd have to check with the postgraduate funding office. You used to have to apply through, like UCT has an internal NRF deadline. Is that still in place? Yeah. So, and in fact, the UCT internal deadline is quite a bit before the national deadline. And I think prospective students do often miss that opportunity because they have an eye on the external deadline, not the UCT deadline. Thanks for clarifying that.
So yes, I just wanted to check, so you obviously first need to receive an acceptance. The masters was obviously try to all of this first grade funding.
Not necessarily. You can start to apply for funding when you apply for the degree, and on the basis that you expect the offer.
Yeah, I think there is an expectation from those receiving applications that there will be amongst the applicants students who have not yet heard whether they've been accepted or not, and who may, in the event of being offered a scholarship, not be able to take it up in the case of not getting an offer. I mean, it's probably a bit unlikely you wouldn't get a place offer, but you would get funding offer.
Yeah.
You're more likely to be the other way around.
In time for placement offers, I think, applications are closing in the end of
September. Yes.
Yes, for coursework.
September. When do you find
When do you get back? Well, that's difficult. There's no harm, but they try to. I mean, September is a huge amount coming in right at the end of the month, so it takes a while to work through that. But I expect some time in November, everybody will have an answer. Yeah.
Thanks.
And then just lastly, a list of tips. I think the other info source I wanted to point you to is UCT's Handbook 14. And again, if you go onto Google and look for UCT Handbooks and number 14, you will eventually get to the page where you can access that. Handbook 14 is a list of postgraduate funding opportunities, sort of in print or PDF format. And then the other things are just about planning ahead. Start from today, gathering as much info as you can if you're looking for next year, or whenever you are looking, just make sure that you leave a lot of time. Having missed a funding deadline that you could have been eligible for is pretty heartbreaking. So don't do that. Keep an eye on dates and deadlines. And I think that's as much as I can share at this point. But all the contact details are there. Get hold of us if you have questions.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Are there any online questions?
We just check out the questions. I'm just conscious of time. Is there any questions in the room? Online?
No questions online.
Okay, so thank you very much, everybody, for coming along. We hope to see you in class at some point. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks online.
Okay.